Oh, yeah. And just so everybody knows, let me introduce the man, the guy. Chris Kehler. He's here. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Bob.
There you go. There you go.
There you go. How's it going in North Carolina?
You know, no, I'm in South Carolina actually. And
South Carolina.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's,
you're one of those people. Okay.
Oh, thank you. No, I'm not. Come on, man. I come from New York City. You know what I mean? It's like, yo, these people down. I'm telling you right now, man. I live down here. It drives me. It's a nice place. I swear to God, I do not want to pick up snow anymore. I don't want to do anything like that anymore, and I don't want the cold. So, okay, that's behind me. On the other hand, the water down here is crazy. When it rains, it rains.
You have crazy water.
Oh, forget about it. I need you down here to bless some of my water over here. I'm not kidding you, man. This is getting crazy. But you know what? You talk about that. How about Canada? Canada's freezing to death. New York is under 7 feet of snow.
Oh, that's terrible. We're watching it on the news. And back in 1997 in Winnipeg, now anybody who knows Winnipeg and knows Canada knows that there is cold and snow, especially when you get into prairie provinces, Manitoba, Saskatchewan. Now, my wife and I are watching what's happening in Buffalo, and we're just praying that it's going to melt very slowly, because in Winnipeg in 1997 we had pretty much that same amount of snow in the same amount of time, and it was in the spring in April. So we had a melt, and we had what we called the flood of the century, where people lost their houses. It was very, very traumatic for the whole city. Luckily, back in the 60s, one of the people in Parliament decided to build a huge floodway around the city, which basically saved us. So we got that going for us. Cold in Winnipeg? Yeah, this morning was minus 26 Celsius, which I think is like minus 15 or something like that Fahrenheit.
From 32, right. So you're talking about 18 degrees or something?
Yeah, and you know what? Hey, this is Winnipeg. We deal with it. We live with it. This is what we're here for. We're not here for the cold, but you just deal with it. It's part of living in Canada, living in the prairies like this. So it's all good. Everything is nice. The fire is on at home, and the igloos are nice and insulated. So we deal with the weather pretty good. As long as the car starts, everything is fine. Other than that, as long as you don't have to stand out wait for a bus to come around, we're doing pretty good. Yeah, we're doing pretty good.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I tell you something. I'm going to blame the whole thing too. I mean, everybody keeps. You've heard Georgia Love. And that she said a lot about HAARP and everything.
Right.
Have you ever seen all of these weather streams that are going across, our continent? They used to be nice waves. They used to wave across. Now they're spikes, and now they give them these turbo names, turbo cold and this and that. Come on, what are they doing? Who are they playing with? I mean, what are we all that dumb?
One of these days, somebody's going to leak something, and I wish somebody would do it really soon, that the governments are doing, and the military are doing all these types of things to affect the weather, to make tornadoes and storms and hurricanes go in different directions, and to do all this stuff. Because, you know what, I think as a human being, we have the right to know what's happening in our own backyard, what's happening to us, and what's causing the crop shortages, what's causing the droughts, what's causing the famines at the very root of it. I think we deserve the right to know exactly what is happening.
I had a guest on the show, and that did call everybody sheeple because we're followers, we're not leaders, and I am trying to with every cell in my body, trying to make people open up their ears, open up their eyes, and say, "What?" Tell me what.
Let me give you a quick example about sheeple. I'm going to do this very quickly. So we got Roxy Lopez with us tonight.
Roxy's listening. She's on. Yeah,
we've got a lot to talk about. Sheeple in Canada. This is for Canada. Now, 2 weeks ago. I went on a course, and this course was to teach you how to read the covenant, how to read, what word am I looking for? Not the contract, the laws, how to view the laws within this country and how to read them and how to interpret them. And what I found out is that income tax in Canada can be voluntary.
Oh, really?
Yes. Now, the reason is because any law in Canada has to have what's called royal assent. We're still sovereign to the Queen in the UK. So whenever there's a law passed in Canada, federal law, it has to have a preamble that says, Her Majesty the Queen says blah, 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 blah. If it doesn't say that, it is not enforceable by law.
Oh.
But now you have to know the way around it to completely make it legal for yourself, or the government doesn't come knocking on your door and say, where's my money? There is
Right.
a way around it. But it was interesting to learn a lot of things like, when you take out a mortgage, you're not really getting lent money. They're creating a liability for you, and that's what you pay back. So they're not really lending you money. So how can you pay back something that hasn't been lent to you?
Yeah, well,
There's a lot of these things going on within our Constitution that you have to know how to read it and know how to understand it and know how to fight for yourself. And there are people I know in Winnipeg who are taking the mortgage brokers to court to say, hey, you know what? You didn't lend me a dime, so why do I need to pay it back?
no, you can't even. I don't think that. I don't.
Somebody's doing it.
You know,
They
I
went to
can.
court this week, and I'm going to find out about it. I'm going to report back on it when I hear about it.
That's like the same thing that we could do here in the States, because when they give you a mortgage, they're supposed to be lending you this money, but you know darn well, and I almost said damn, you know darn well that the money that they're lending you is printed up on just a good look. It's worthless paper.
It is.
It's the same thing as yours. It's a promise, like I'm giving you a line of credit, and you're going to pay back that line of credit. But over here, they say, no, we lent you money, and now they really will take you to court, and they're not waiting for the Queen. You know, you don't call her up and say, hey, listen, Queenie, you got to do this.
Queen either, let me tell you that. This month, the month of November in Canada, I don't know if it's like this in the States, but we call it the month of Movember. It's Prostate Awareness Month in Canada. And now what this means is, of course, we want to bring awareness to the fact that prostate cancer is an issue among men. Now, I'm bringing this up because a lot of people ask me, what kind of healing work can you do? Can you work on this? Can you work on that? The answer is, if you're concerned about your prostate and you want to go for an exam, what's the scariest thing in the world for a guy? The digital exam, right?
I guess.
Okay, so
I had one of them, and the guy said cough, and that was it. You know, it was cool.
So there's a lot of guys who will not go for this exam just because they don't want to feel like they've been intruded upon. Like, at least give me a kiss and take me for dinner before you
violated, right?
So within the work I do, I can use my pendulum and I can ask questions to see what type of shape your prostate is in. It's another way. Instead of going to the doctor and doing it, you can do it through my clinic with me, and we can look to see what's going on. Is there any swelling, any infection, anything to be aware of? And, of course, we can clear it out with the energy tools. That's just something I wanted to bring up because it is a month of Movember. A lot of men are growing mustaches in support of awareness. I'm not going to grow a mustache. I'll end up eating the whole thing myself.
Yeah, it would take me 2 months to grow one.
I tried growing a beard a few months back. My wife saw a picture of me when I was younger with a beard, and she says, "Oh, you looked really hot. Why don't you grow a beard again?" And I tried, and I was like, "No, this ain't happening."
No,
I don't do facial hair. I don't do head hair. We like to be nice and clean. Now tonight, we've got on the show, her name is Roxy Lopez. Now, I was on Roxy Lopez's show probably 8-9 months ago, I think it was. Very interesting person to talk to. She's very knowledgeable. Let me go through her bio. Okay, Roxy Lopez is a published author and recording artist. She has appeared in several documentaries and has been interviewed by KPHO, LA Times, CBS News, along with countless other radio and TV talk shows. The Truth Denied Tabloid is a smaller volunteer organization of investigative writers and is featured on thousands of websites worldwide. The Truth Denied acquired worldwide attention when Lopez made a global stance against geoengineering, aka chemtrails, GMOs, fracking, environmental health hazards, Morgellons disease, gang stalking, and illegal government surveillance programs that are increasingly on the up and rising. Roxy opens a can of worms to the secrets of that the global government is keeping from all of us. Roxy hosted her own radio show for nearly 4 years, and the library of information can be found at the Truth Denied radio shows. That's thetruthDenied.com. In 2013, Lopez was offered a new radio and film broadcast through David Icke's The People's Voice beginning 11/24/13, but it was canceled when Icke left TPV. Since she has had countless offers to host her shows at a number of radio stations, but has declined because of her involvement in 2 documentaries which are soon to be released. Roxy's mission to expose, corrupt, in an effort to kickstart humanity's critical mind, in turn create the necessary changes required for a life of freedom. Humanity must elect common law recognition, the inherent dignity and the equal of intangible rights, so that all members of humanity family become the foundation of freedom, equality, justice, and peace in the world, which should forever be known as universal humanitarian rights. She is an investigative journalist covering subjects such as geoengineering, Morgellons disease, GMO foods, Morgellons, gang stalking, the military-industrial complex, the war on vaccines, free energy, biology, HARP, Agenda 21, NWO, ETs, UFOs, and the rise of the New World Order. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce Roxy Lopez. Roxy, thank you for being on A Quantum View tonight.
Well, thanks for having me and thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad to be here on this eve of Thanksgiving. So thank you so much. And just a note to everyone that is listening as well. This is a time of year that we get together with family and friends and some type of fellowship and activists get together or so forth. And I just want to say we could not survive, meaning my tabloid and all the work that we've been doing for a few years, we could not survive without our readers, our listeners, and those who participate in very, very important conversations. So, you know, I'm just so happy to say that one thing I have learned about the public, the global public, in the last few years is there are a lot of bright people. There are a lot of caring, loving, genuine people in the world. You give me hope to continue to do the work that I do as a volunteer. And in exchange, I do the work for you because you take this work and you spread it and you spread awareness to heal this planet. So that's my thank you for Thanksgiving.
Oh, that's awesome. Getting a warm and fuzzy feeling. And it is Thanksgiving in the States and Canada. It's not Thanksgiving. It's just thanks for not being too cold. So the reason Roxy wanted to have you on, number one, your vast knowledge about all this stuff. Within A Quantum View, we like to tackle what causes health problems within people. I do healing work. And my goal is to educate humanity itself on all the different types of causes that there is that can cause a health problem, that can be a contributor. And I especially liked what you've been doing, researching work within GMOs, or genetically modified organisms. So why don't you tell us a little bit about where you started looking into GMOs? But you know what? Before we do that, I want to give you a quick story. Now, when you think GMOs, you think right away Monsanto. And you think, okay, here's this big conglomerate. And in Winnipeg, we're under 1 million people, tiny little city compared to a lot of big cities in the States. And I have a friend in Winnipeg who does a blog, and she put up something slandering and talking bad about GMOs and Monsanto. Monsanto rep came to her store, shook his finger in front of her and said, do not talk about Monsanto. Turned around, left his business card, and walked away. Okay. She was floored. She was floored. Monsanto is everywhere. Monsanto is Big Brother. They're everywhere, and they're making sure that the work that they're doing stays within what they want to consider their own realm, their own way of doing things. So anybody who says anything bad is going to get their fingers shook in front of them. I just wanted to share that story because we know Monsanto is the biggest culprit when it comes to GMOs.
Yeah, that's kind of creepy. You know, Chris, you mentioned at the front when you gentlemen were talking, you said, you wish that there was somebody who could, whistleblow, the proof of weather modification, et cetera, and HARP and all of this stuff. And I just want you to know that with weather modification, there is proof, and there's a lot of it. Just to let you know, and there are government leaks out there, and a lot of the information pertaining to weather modification is very public. And in the United States, it's under the climate bills, so climate change bills. If you look, and we do have quite a few of those PDF files if people even care to read it, but it is inevitable that people take a look at it to stop the distraction talk, which is, when people are dealing with disinformationists on, let's say, social media like Facebook, et cetera, they're trapped in an argument on the vapor trails that we see in the sky. And the argument's not there. The argument is in the climate change bills and the appropriations. In our country, appropriation means government writes a check in the back of that bill. So in other words, when a law is passed or a bill is passed or sent into Congress, there's money that goes with that bill. In other words, to make that law happen and support the law financially. And there was billions of dollars being appropriated to weather modification.
Interesting. So right now, I understand there is lots of drought happening in the California area. That you look at different areas of the country. Some places are getting slammed with precipitation. Some places are slammed with drought. It seems to be no commonality in the weather. And you can certainly see it when you watch the news at night, that there's all these different weather patterns all over the continent. And it certainly does, in certain ways, makes you think. I remember watching the news one day. This is probably a year and a half ago, and there was a very big hurricane. And there was a big election happening in the States. I forget exactly what it was. And this hurricane, looked like it took a dogleg right into Florida, just to try to stop something from happening. It was really amazing. You could just look at it and say that is not natural. So as you said, yes, there is ways that you can see that things are happening, but still, everybody knows about it. But nobody seems to be doing anything about it or taking the stand big enough to really make that big of a difference.
Well, that's because I think people in general, the general public, want to make changes, want to do something about it. But if you have a government or world governments who are painting you activists as crazy people, which is, this is across the board. I could name 50 different genres that people are being painted as crazy people, GMOs being one of them, for even daring to question laws that are being passed and experiments that are being performed, and biological tests that are being, happening worldwide. How dare we ask any questions about this? How dare we question the powers that be? How dare we question what that, what's that shot, you're going to give my child, or the requirement for going to school in the USA for a 5-year-old child? How dare we question, can I ask what's in that shot? Can I ask what's in that medicine? And when we do begin to ask these questions, we get turned away, we get shut up, shut down. And, that's a reality. And I think for most people who are really busy, let's say, a couple who has 4 children or 3 children and has, both mother and father work, and everybody's pretty busy, right? It gets very hard to go against the system when your first intent wasn't to go against the system at all. You were just inquiring about something. And, the conspiracy on GMOs and factory farming, by the way, I wrote this article today. It is chock full of information for your public. And of course, when we are finished with the show, I'll go ahead and throw this. I'm honored to throw the show into this article as well for the general public. Again, why is this called a conspiracy on GMOs? What GMOs are real? What's the standard definition of a GMO? The standard accepted definition is a genetically modified organism, which is a bacterium, yeast, insect, plant, fish, or mammal, whose genetic material has been altered using genetic engineering techniques. GMOs are the source of genetically modified foods and are also widely used in scientific research and to produce goods other than food. Okay, most people don't really know what that means, but even when I came across this, you asked me earlier, how did I stumble onto GMOs to begin with? I stumbled on GMOs because there was a woman in the country of Cyprus who is a practitioner, a healing practitioner and doctor, who was suffering 6 years ago from Morgellons disease. So she was looking into the disease, and she was using herself as her own guinea pig. And she and I were going back and forth in emails. And she wrote the most prophetic emails and gave me data that made her much more credible for me. And she actually had stated at one point that Morgellons disease should not be called Morgellons disease. It should be called genetically modified organism disease. And I thought, what is that? So then she explained, it's a rabbit hole that never ends, as you know. But when she said what a GMO was, I started looking into this about 5 years ago, and I was floored by it because, I didn't even know that GMO foods and crops were substances that I was eating, substances that I was eating. I had no idea. And I had no idea about what Morgellons disease is. And today's topic is not about Morgellons, so I won't go into it. If anybody wants more information, we have extensive information on Morgellons disease at thetruthandnight.com. Just put in the little search engine there on the left, Morgellons, and you'll get quite a bit of information. But a non-GMO, an activist against GMOs, in other words, definition of GMOs is slightly different. It's GMOs, genetically modified organisms, are plants or animals that have been genetically engineered with DNA from bacteria, viruses, or other plants and animals.
Okay.
Yeah. These experimental combination of genes from different species cannot occur in nature or in traditional crossbreeding. Now, that is the true ism of a GMO. And what we can go into very much detail, but you and I don't have all that time in the world. But you brought up health. And basically, the health, the defects that go along with consuming GMOs are pretty big. And there's a wide range of them. But it's not just a GMO. We have a world culture. The USA is, to me, the worst. We have the worst agriculture practices, is what it is. And we're also training the rest of the world, which is why Obama in 2012 gave Monsanto, waved the magic wand for Monsanto in our country to be completely unscathed by any attacks. It can't be brought into a court of law for any side effects of GMOs, etc.
Now,
and when that happened, Chris, a lot of people kind of went over their head. It's like, why would you make something called the Monsanto Protection Act?
Exactly. Now I understand that in Europe, GMOs are outlawed. That
for
Monsanto
the most part, not all the way, but for the most part. And see, it started, I believe, in the EU. It started with banning feeding, farm animals. It's because the farm animals are being fed GMO foods. And so it kind of started there with banning that. But, there is something called the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. Now, let me back up. The protesters against GMOs argue that industrialized culture is a threat to the environment, biodiversity, and the livelihood of small family farmers. They demand change towards more environmentally friendly farming, protection of bees, fair prices for farmers, better policies against hunger, etc. And the EU was very good at making that stance. They started that stance. And I find it ironic. The EU also criticizes heavily the transatlantic, this is the citizens of Europe, criticize the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. Here's what's interesting. This partnership started up. This is a secret trade alliance between the EU and the US. And it's a bilateral trade agreement. It's about reducing the regulatory barriers to trade for big business, things like food safety, environmental legislation, etc. And there's a gentleman who is the executive director of the campaign group known as War on Want. His name's John Hillary. And he is quoted as saying, this is an assault on the European and U.S. societies by transnational corporations. So see, it is the corporations that are getting, and of course in this country, we're very big on lobbying, which is basically these corporations pay big bucks to get inside of government, to change the order of the day, if you will. And this is how this domino effect takes place. So here we've got this ban in the EU with GMOs and feeding their their livestock, if you will, GMO food, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Their farmers are safe from this, everything. But behind closed doors, the secret alliance of the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership is going on.
So they are getting GMOs in.
Well, it's being negotiated as any partnership generally is, and it's going to be a trade alliance between the U.S. and the EU. And here's the concern. For short, let's call it the TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. The negotiations began February 2013. They've been secretive and undemocratic. The secrecy is ongoing, with nearly all information on negotiations coming from leaked documents via FOIA, which is the Freedom of Information Act. That's how this has come out. And what does this tell us as a consumer? TTIP's regulatory convergence agenda is currently seeking to bring EU standards on food and safety and the environment closer to those of the U.S., which is not good, people. Because the U.S. regulations are much less stringent than the EU. 70% of all processed foods sold in the U.S. supermarkets contain genetically modified ingredients.
So the genetically modified plant or whatever it is, now my understanding is that let's take soy, for instance. That's probably the biggest one, is also corn. But my understanding is that they genetically modify the soy so that they can spray it with Roundup and kill the weeds, but not the plant itself. Is that correct?
Sort of. It's more like the seed itself is engineered to contain the pesticide in it. So what do you think you're eating at the end of the day?
Is that right?
Yes, and here's what's very interesting, sidebar on that. Here's what's interesting. Also, the seed contains fertilizer. So it's got these artificial elements to it. And so but when the plant grows, it's basically, bugs don't want to eat it. The environment, like heavy metals in the soil and such won't affect the plant. The plant's like, bio, man. It's like glowing.
And, it's a bionic soy.
It is.
Can I add something to that?
Well, one more note. But what's happening in our country anyway is that the bugs that eat these plants are now becoming resistant to the GMO plant. In other words, they're eating them anyway. And the bugs are getting bio.
And then the bugs are going to bite us.
Right.
Well, the
Right.
bugs, I mean, that was the point of GMOs, right? So now you've got in certain areas of the country an over-contamination of bugs, an infestation of bugs who, basically outran the bear, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, what I was going to add to that was the seeds that you're talking about, Roxy, are asexual. You can't take the seeds from the plants that are grown and re-sow them and have them grow again because they won't grow. You have to go back to Monsanto and buy more seeds.
Correct. And see, in other words, the plants are sterile. So this plant itself won't reproduce, but which, by the way, is another issue. You see, we have multiple issues, and that's a good point, Bob. Very good point. Because what are the bees? What's the bees' job now? Because the bees are pollinators, right? So if these plants no longer need, pollination, well, what's happening is then you've got this incredible dying off of the bees because they're still trying to do their job. These plants aren't producing seeds. And indeed, you've got to go back to, the corporation, Monsanto, to buy your seeds for the next season. And that's, in my opinion, not sustainable. And anytime I've heard a Monsanto rep interviewed, I mean, this company is unbelievable. They actually believe that they are feeding the world because, there's this, their whole mentality is that the world is a little over 7 billion large now and that there isn't enough food to feed everybody, not enough food to go around. Well, let me tell you, I did an article a couple of weeks ago on how false that is. We're not having food shortages. The U.S. alone, and this is mind-boggling. The U.S., 40% of all food produced in the United States goes uneaten and in the garbage. Americans throw away an estimated 25% of the food they bring home. That is more than 20 pounds of food per person every month, enough to fill the Rose Bowl 90,000-seat stadium daily.
And there's people starving all over the world.
Right.
There's 1 in 6 children starving in the U.S. It's a new epidemic. So you want to tell me there's a food shortage? The U.S. Department of Agriculture reports that a typical American throws out 40% of fresh fish, 23% of fresh eggs, and 20% of milk. Consider these cost estimates of all food that never gets eaten in the U.S. and imagine just how much we can save by wasting less food. We could save 25% of all fresh water used in the U.S., 4% of the total U.S. oil consumption, $165 billion per year, more than $40 billion from households alone, $750 million per year just to dispose of the food, and 33 million tons of landfill waste, leading to greenhouse gas emissions. That's what we could save just by not throwing away food.
Roxy, I feel unalone. I've said the same thing in that. And I mean, right now our chat box in is blowing up. People are saying that Hungary, as a matter of fact, burnt all of their GMO crop fields.
I have pity and I have sadness for this. Let me tell you, I am born and raised in Hawaii. I was born with eating organic foods. We didn't call them organic. We didn't have the pesticides.
Right.
We didn't have that. But here's my point. This sadness, and I feel the pain of all the organic farmers, the small farmers, the under 20-acre farmers. I feel your pain, and I'm very educated on what you're going through. And I'm with you, and I stand with you. The education needs to reach further out to the general public who is part of the problem, who is purchasing the GMO food, who is purchasing this poisonous food, and throwing 40% of it in the garbage. We need as a civilization, we need to become more conscious of this. That's all. You know what I mean? But see, American citizens, citizens all over the world just don't know this is all going on in the background. But I have a short story for you about Hawaii. I went there to do some research, go home to do some research with the farmers. I was at an organic farm, papayas and a number of other fruit. And this is what their farmers are telling me. By the way, they educate people from all over the world for free in programs to show them how to do agriculture, organic culture, and a number of other ways of growing food sustainably. What was right across the street from them? 100 acres of Monsanto's GMO papayas.
Very nice.
Now, to cross-pollinate.
If there's a small farmer in the States that is using his own seeds or choosing not to use Monsanto seeds, what happens to him?
Well, there's a number of things. I mean, I've gotten a lot of emails about this. It depends on, if you're downwind from a GMO farm or not. For instance, my sister has a sustainable 20-acre farm in Hawaii, but she's upwind. You see, she's up in the mountains, so she's not affected by the GMO farmers that are further down the mountain, that are closer to the ocean. She's not affected, but it can cross-pollinate, and then before you know it, a number of things are happening, and this is what the papaya, the non-GMO, the organic farm told me, that they were getting cited and having representatives from the FDA showing up at their their organic farm, basically wanting to convict them of stealing GMO seeds from across the street. And an organic farmer, anyone that's listening right now, and everybody that's in your chat, you're rolling your eyes right now, because the whole idea of being an organic farmer isn't just about no pesticides. It's a way of life. It's a sustainable way of life through and through. And you know what I'm talking about, you who are growing food out there. It's a culture, man. And it's a culture we came from. This has nothing to... Why on earth would an organic farmer want to put, a few acres of GMO seeds for GMO papayas? Not. It's worthless.
Exactly.
An organic farmer.
So what type of health problems are you hearing about from people who are eating GMO foods? Is there anything that stands out?
Yes, and it's very sad. And I did a lot of research on this, Chris, years. And I had it affect a member of my own little family. And the number one outbreak is IBD.
Okay.
Irritable bowel disorder, irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory diseases are all associated with GMOs. And it makes sense that it would be. And I have to tell you, Western doctors are not aware of it. They're calling it with children and the elderly, and animals, small animals, pets. Watch your pets, people. Please. Do not feed your small animals and small children GMOs. Animals die quicker of it because their life is in general 7 years to one of ours. And children will die of it or get very, very sick, and that will hurt them the rest of their life. But if you look into it, and I've got a lot of information as well on my website, just put, again, IBS in the search engine at thetruthtonight.com, and you can get a lot of information on the side effects. But I'll tell you, Western medicine does not understand this yet, so they just say that you have a food allergy. And guess what? The food allergy of these children, the list of the foods is basically everything in the produce department.
Well, look at peanuts nowadays with kids. Every kid is allergic to peanuts. The peanut allergy is crazy. I'm lucky my son is not allergic to peanuts, but we go into the school for preschool, and you see on all the doors, you see like almost like skull and crossbones signs that say no peanuts allowed. So-and-so is deathly allergic to peanuts. Now, my wife was almost deathly allergic to cashews. I worked on her with it, and we got it down to a point where she's not going to try eating a cashew. But we figured out exactly what it was. There's viruses involved. And within GMOs, there is viruses. There's delivery systems of programs. When you get into the full conspiracy of things within GMOs, that's what I am finding within my work is that there is a delivery system for a program of some type. So I'm looking at it at a different aspect. There's the DNA changes within it, but there's also a deeper thing within it that I'm finding. I'm working with it, and it is making a difference within people. And within the work that I do, the proof is always in the pudding. It's not just theory or conspiracy. It is actual proof that when you do work on somebody with it, the problem goes away, and you know what you did. You know that a problem does exist. And the only people that need to know is me and the person I'm working on. We can stand on soapboxes all day, but ultimately when you need to fix somebody, when somebody's got a health problem, they need to know what it is, and this is what I'm finding.
Chris, Chris, you hit the nail right on the head, because here's the deal, and this is scientifically proven. Take a healthy plant, let's say a tomato plant. You can measure its frequency. Now take a GMO plant. It basically has none or goes into the negative. And if you're working with energy, okay, because food is what for us? I mean, come on, people. It's all over advertising.
It's energy.
It's energy. Food is energy, and that's literal. So if you're eating bad food, no energy food, no nutritional food, what are you getting out of it? You're gonna cause problems with yourself. You know what I mean? Your body is allergic to. Your body's smart. Our immune systems are smart. Our immune systems say, "Hey, that's garbage," and starts to try to fight it, which is what inflammatory is all about. When you get inflamed, your body is trying.
Disease.
That's right. Okay, so I completely agree with what you're saying. I agree that and I do think that everything for us is two-part at The Truth Tonight. We present the problem and we present the solution. As you well know, as I well know, awareness is key first. And then we set out and hopefully we can prevent people from ever even getting ill by the education. And then, of course, when they do come down with something and become ill, then that is where practitioners as yourself come in to help to heal the wound, and then, of course, help to educate that person as well, so that they can move forward with education, with preventative, and with some healing on their own body and share that news with somebody else.
So when somebody goes shopping to the store, okay, we all go to the store, we got to buy our energy, we got to buy our food. Is there labeling on these packages that say that there's GMO component within it?
No, and labeling is a big issue, a very big issue. But let me just jump forward on that one. I want to share something because we are talking about. I'm not trying to skirt we just don't have labeling. Some of the organic companies are putting on their food no GMOs. So that's good. So that at least you know that doesn't have it. But the companies that are using, it's almost as if we're saying, aisles 1 through 20, don't shop in those aisles of canned goods because they're all GMOs. None of them say no GMOs. And if you go to the organic section, you'll see, a variety of food that says no GMOs, or you'll see grass-fed meats, and you'll see, grass-fed, non-caged, eggs, chickens, so forth. But here's something that will be helpful, and this is also in the article so that you don't all have to remember this, but 10 reasons to buy organic meat and dairy, right here. Because they're free of antibiotics, added hormones, GMO feed, and other drugs, no GMO animals. So there's your answer right there. When you're buying organic, you're buying non-GMO. Okay? Number 2, it's safe from mad cow. Animals aren't forced to be cannibals, so you don't have to worry about mad cow when you're buying what? Organic meat and dairy. Animals free range and graze, that's number 3. So they free range, they graze, which means they're not all tied up in little tiny cages and stressed out, and they're given hormones and all kinds of other, antibiotics and things to get them unstressed out. They're free range animals. They are free to graze. Therefore, Again, buy organic meat and dairy. 5, their manure. Small farms use it. Industrial farms pollute it. Okay, number 6, animals are integral to small farms. 7, fewer chemicals are used in organic meats and dairy. 8, diversity, because small sustainable farms tend to raise a wider variety of livestock. Number 9, factory farms use huge amounts of resources in their organic farms. Organic farms use less energy with careful ecological management and using natural ecological balances to solve pest problems. Buying animal products from local farms further reduces energy by reducing the amount of miles the food travels to your table. And number 10, why buy organic meat and dairy? Because your dollars support the farm you buy it from.
Here's another reason to buy organic. Have you ever tasted an organic free-range chicken compared to a factory-made chicken? The taste is unbelievable. We said this on the show last time, that there's a couple companies in Canada. One of them is A&W, making burgers. They're advertising these all free-range chickens. They're advertising that there's no steroids or hormones in their beef. President's Choice, which is a very big chain in Canada, is saying that they're not putting any kind of artificial colors or flavors in their food. So there is big companies starting to get on this whole mindset of eating healthier. So why not go out and buy a free range chicken and try it? You'll be amazed in the flavor that is there. It tastes like it was raised on the farm. It doesn't taste like it was manufactured in some big white barn somewhere.
You're right, and I do get a lot of emails regarding produce tastes better, and it does, and it really does. You know, I played a trick on my husband once because a few years
How dare
ago,
you?
I did because we were eating steaks in the summer and barbecuing and this and that. And I went and bought some wonderful grass-fed organic steaks, and we sat down to eat, and he was eating, and I said, "What you keep?" And he said, "I said, you keep looking at me." And he said, "Where did you get this steak?" And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Man, this is tender. This tastes good." And I got out the package, and he said, "We're not buying anything else from here on." So if it's not just for you made such a good point, it tastes better because it's real food.
And you're going to get real nutrients out of it too, and that's the key. You got to remember, now our bodies are made up of protein, amino acids. If you're not putting good quality amino acids and food and nutrients into your body, you're going to be sick. You're going to get old faster. You're going to be stuck in a chair all your life, and you're going to have, when you go to the bathroom, it's going to look like soft serve ice cream all the time. So sorry for getting so graphic. Do yourself a favor. Like I said, just go out and buy some and try some, and do a little bit of research yourself. There's a lot of documentaries out there. There's Food Inc. There's a few other ones that people have done that show the difference between large corporations making the food for you and what the small farmers are doing, and it really makes a lot of sense that the organic farmers are doing things that the way things were done, hundreds of years ago, which worked just perfectly fine, and there was always lots of food. So there is lots of material. Look at Roxy's website, thetruthDenied.com. Go on to Netflix and look at all the documentaries there is. There's 1,000 different ways to educate yourself, and the key here is education. If you don't educate yourself, you are sheeple, and all you're doing is following what you think is the right thing to do, going to the store and buying off the shelf all the time, instead of looking around for a better place to buy your food. Look down the street when you go out of town. Is there a small farmer selling produce on the side of the road? Is there somebody selling free-range chickens and free-range beef and that type of thing? Look around for these butchers. There's a lot of specialty butchers within all these different cities. They're the best-kept secret in the world. Look for these places. Educate yourself. Find out what's really out there, what's in your food, and you eat organic for a week, and I'm telling you, you will never go back to eating stuff off the shelf again.
Oh, I agree with you. Absolutely. And I think some of the biggest changes that people have to make is doing this step by step. Because a lot of people complain that organic food is more expensive and this and that. But just as we had stated, when we start to support our local organic, when we align. If this transatlantic trade and investment partnership can align, secretly, why don't we, the people,
secretly?
Right. Why don't we align and say, hey, the more we can buy locally, the better it's going to be in organic, the more that we can support those farmers, because this is what it's all about. We support the farmers who are feeding us the organic food that are keeping us alive, and we keep them alive too.
You know what? Maybe we should open up a website for all of the local growers to put their names and their farms and their whatever they want to put, their website, their address, whatever, on it, and see how many names we get nationwide that would put their name on there to say, if you want my food, come and buy it.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
And I think that's fabulous because these search engines, as we well know, Google search engines, unfortunately, make, when you're looking for your local organic farms, it pushes those names of those farms down the search engine so you can't find them. And this is what people complain about the most. They can't even find something that's, listen, I live in an area here in Arizona of farmland and I can't find an organic farm, but they're everywhere supposedly.
Huh. See, now
they're well-kept secrets. I camp in a campground just outside Winnipeg, and there's these little
secrets.
They're little families. All these little families, and in Manitoba they tend to be little Hutterite Mennonite style families, and they raise all of their own stuff. They've got big gardens in the back, and you walk into this place and you can smell the freshness within there, and there's everything you can think of. And what they do is they source out to other farms in the area. So if somebody does chickens, they'll source out all these chickens to all these other small farms, and they'll make a community out of it. They'll make a grid of organic food. So there's always something of everything within one place, even though they don't grow it or farm it all.
Also, their bartering power is unreal. Unreal what they do.
Oh, yes.
They trade milk for meat, and meat for vegetables, and vegetables
like the
for
old
more.
days. Like the old days.
Yeah, but they do that now between, I don't know, Roxy, what they have in Arizona, but out here in that we got a couple little places that you can actually find where all of the local guys come and they bring their stuff under a whole bunch of canvas tents and things, and you can actually literally go a couple times a year in that, and you can buy anything you can think of. I mean, we're talking tomatoes that are big as both hands put together.
It's called a farmer's market.
Yeah, but they call it something else. They call it organic fields or something like that. Yeah.
I think that's fabulous, and that is where we're going with all of this. We've got to just sort of support each other, and any way we can do it. This is what we do in Hawaii. I mean, that's what my sister's farm does with other farmers around her. They all trade their food, with each other, and they can count on knowing that those foods don't have pesticides because it's each other growing it. They don't have a license to grow it; they're growing it for their own consumption.
I think that's the way the world should start looking, and that's the way it is going. More and more, we're seeing this type of farming happening. And the thing is awakening to the whole thing, and looking for it, and educating and researching it all, and realizing, whoa, boy, I didn't realize that I've been living in this house for 20 years. I didn't realize that a block away is an organic butcher. So you got to put yourself out there, get yourself out of the big stores, and look for this stuff. We are out of time for right now. I really want to thank Roxy Lopez for being on the show. I knew it was going to be interesting, and I knew it was going to be informational. So Roxy, again, thank you so much for being on. And I want to do some more work with you in the future on this type of thing. I think there's something that we can both benefit from as far as helping people along the road.
I'd like that idea, and thanks so much for having me, and thanks everybody who tuned in and listened. And guess what? I'm not cooking for Thanksgiving, so I'm going to be hanging out.
Oh, bummer!
I'm going to be doing something completely different this year. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm breaking all my own trends. But Bob, I love your idea as well on putting a website together and see how many. I think we should do it.
You know what? I'm serious.
If you do decide to do that, let me know. I'd love to help out.
Look, we can do something like that. We can put it on our website. websites and things. That let's see what comes out of the thing, and we can share information that way.
I love it. I love it. Hey, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. I'm
Awesome.
thankful for a whole lot of things, and I'm thankful that for you, Chris, and you're out there, you got your show, and Bob, thanks for providing the space and everything for this awesome conversation. You guys have a great rest of
Beautiful.
the week.
Thank you, Roxy. Now, before we end the show, I want to do a clearing. I was going to do it at the beginning, but we got too involved. Now, before I came onto the show, I asked my guides to do a mass clearing. And they came up with this scenario, and I looked at it and shook my head and says, okay, let's go with it. I'm going to take my pyramid, I'm going to hold it up to the microphone, and I'm going to do a clearing. So everybody hold on to your hats. This is going to sound pretty good. So I'm going to call upon the 6 pillars of Solomon to lure the Red Bull out of everyone listening. Call upon the 6 pillars of Solomon to lure out the Red Bull. So what this is going to do is it's going to take out an energy out of everyone that should not be there. Here it goes. And that is finished. Everyone, you've been listening to the Chris Kehler on A Quantum View. I'm going to see everybody again in 2 weeks. Bob, take care of yourself. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving.